Hey, kia ora koutou whānau. Welcome back to another edition of Big Hairy News. Kia ora, Chewy.
Good evening.
Now, how do you address someone on ANZAC Day? Is saying Happy ANZAC Day inappropriate? You're a bit more of an expert than me in these words. What do you say? Is there a greeting or not?
I had someone say Happy ANZAC to me, ANZAC Day to me the other day, and it's not right.
It doesn't feel right, does it?
Right. I like it. You know, nothing against that person. It's just, it's not that sort of day.
Chat, people in the chat, is there a greeting for ANZAC Day, or is it just turbro? Because that's kind of appropriate for it. Or is it just hello and shake hello, and that's kind of a generic-y ANZAC Day.
Everyone gets a firm handshake. Everyone.
A firm handshake. So we are going to talk a bit about ANZAC Day today. There's a lot to talk about. It's actually, we should maybe, I do this podcast broadcast that I haven't done for a wee while called Elephant TV, where we talk about the elephant in the room. Maybe I should try and organise one around ANZAC Day, which is, what we're kind of talking about tonight, which is the fine line, and I think it's a very fine, thin line between commemorating ANZAC Day and glorifying ANZAC Day. And I guess by glorifying it, you mean glorifying the actions that we think about on ANZAC Day. Is ANZAC Day a war movie? Or do we need to figure out a way to be respectful and empathetic and humble, and even if understanding that many of us, let's be blunt. There's never in the history of our certainly of our country, but of the Western world, been a quote unquote just war. That's never existed. And so how do you do that? How do you actually have a conversation or have a thing to go? These 18-year-old boys went offshore and did, watch, what is it, the German movie that just won the Oscar for best?
All Quiet on the Western Front.
Watch that. Perfect example of those 18-year-old boys in the stairwell getting racked up by people reading comic books about war, thinking they're going off to a big adventure, I guess from the Ally side to fight the Bosch, and from the other side it's to fight whatever. It's they didn't know, and they went there and they were like, fuck me 4 times, and it wasn't what they were expected, and they were talked into it. But then again, like the flip side to that is, in World War II, someone walks into Poland. What do? You sit there and go, oh, well, Poland, look after yourself. Or do you do something about it? It's such for me a nuanced conversation, and we live in a world of black and white around it. Either, thank you for your service, God bless, everything's good, or it's you're baby killers. You know what I mean? It's like that seems to be the two conversations, and actually it's a hard one.
I think where we stand today, and this is something that I'm obviously very interested in. I'm a war history nerd, that sort of thing. I think we've come further down the line from going after the soldiers and calling them baby killers like they were after Vietnam.
Yep.
I think we've got to the point where you blame the leadership rather than the guys that go.
Yeah.
And that's good. But I think 108 years on from the day itself, I think the real danger is, as those generations that actually did go and fight in various conflicts and that sort of thing, as they drop off, there can be the temptation to fall into a national myth, to fall into jingoism, to fall into the glorification of something that is ultimately fucking horrible.
Yeah, and what it is on some level is with longevity, the story it's become and I'm not saying war, and I'm not minimizing it, but it becomes a fishing story. My fish that I caught was this big, and it becomes this big, and it becomes this big, and by the time you're 20 years later, it was actually a world record fish. We just never recorded it. And if you want evidence of that, just have a look at what happened, in the times of Rome, in Caesar's time. We all have toga parties now. I think it's hilarious, but 2,000 years ago, what was happening in those times to those people was not to be sniffled at or laughed at. I know that's a big extraction from 2,000 years to 108 years, but that's what happens with time. With time, we make things less serious, less important. We lose the context, and it becomes a joke, or it becomes maybe not what it was originally designed for, and it will become not originally what we were thinking about. And I guess one of the questions we want to ask tonight is, where are we at with ANZAC Day? Now, for those of you who know that we're raving lefties, for me at least, this is not like a pacifist FM. You're not going to get that from me tonight. At least I don't think you're going to get that from us tonight. We actually want to have sort of a bit of a balanced look and talk about it, and acknowledging that it's actually quite a difficult conversation to find the balance between, it's like we talked about with violence, finding the balance between when is it appropriate to step in and fight back and use an amount of force, even if you're talking up into and including war, or when is it time to put your hands up and go, we're not participating. It's not as black and white as that. Should everyone just stay out of Ukraine? Should there be no help to Ukraine when Russia walked in? Should we just go, that's not what we're about. And whilst we obviously approach the world from the left, you're not going to get sort of the purely pacifist message from us. But also, I'll be honest with you, I think that pacifism's had a really bad rap because people see pacifism as passive, but I don't believe pacifism to be passive. I think it can be quite active in what it's resisting as well. But anyway, let's start the show with a couple of things. The first thing, there's a bit of for you people in the chat right now, Chewy, no one saw our little joke last night.
I'm disappointed in you all, chat.
We talked about this before we were on, and we went, should we bring attention to our little joke?
No,
or should we just see if anyone sees it?
They'll pick it up straight away.
So pay attention, little chats, for the little joke. I'm going to show you an image that I showed you, I think, about 4 to 6 times last night, and see if you can find. I'm going to only put it up for about 5 or 10 seconds. See if you can find the joke in it, and the first one who gets it right in the chat will win themselves the approval of Chewy's orange hat. Is that an orange hat, or is that just your hair color tonight? It's a hat.
No, it's a red hat that makes me look like Jacques Cousteau.
All right, here we go, people. This is for you. Have a look at the. Oh, that didn't. Oh, I don't know. Oh, there we go. So this is one of the images we put up last night when we talked, and if you can see the little joke that we didn't bring attention to last night, that we used all through the night. I think that's long enough. Are you looking at the image? Long enough? It's a good one, ain't you? It is quite a good joke.
There we go. We've got a winner.
Are we already?
Yeah.
Who's I can't see it. Are you looking
at
John got it. Yes. So our little joke was reality check radio. You see what we did there?
Yeah.
See what we did there? I thought that was quite funny. And can I say, Twitter's been busy today, obviously. Again, very little to no pushback of substance. And we said this last night. And look, I'm not looking for a scrap with anybody. I'm genuinely not. But I did say last night, you'll struggle to have an honest and genuine crack at us because we played information. We played the words of, and then we showed what the report said and went, that's not what it says. So actually, not a lot of pushback. Although I got to say this to people, and I have seen a couple of tweets fly by when I've been busy, is that people who think that I personally, and I believe Chewy's probably in the same camp, give a flying fuck about numbers are going to be sorely mistaken. I grew up in an era working in radio, that should be. Grew up in an era, I worked for Jeremy Corbett and Kim Adamson and Paul Ego at More FM in Auckland. And the joke was, Kim and Corbett, one of the biggest radio shows in the country and biggest radio show in Auckland, used to talk about our 7 listeners. And so they'd get an email from someone and it'll say they're going to really miss the show because they're moving off to London, and Corby would go, and that means we're down to 6 listeners. That's always been the attitude that I've had. And if you notice today, Chewy, when I sent that text out about you and following you, I went to both of the people listening. So I genuinely don't give a fuck. It's not an ammunition you're going to use against me to say this person's got so much more followers than you. I'm like, okay, does that make our point wrong? Oh, it doesn't. Okay. That's fine. So just so you know, in the future, you need to be a bit better than that. Been doing this for a very long time with people who want to have a crack against, certainly against me, and this show for 18 months or so, whatever it's been against us. So come up with something more clever. Be cleverer, trolls. Be cleverer.
Be better.
Be better. Now, speaking of better, we didn't mention this yesterday because obviously we had a very, very, very full show. One of the living legends of comedy in Australia passed away over the weekend, Barry Humphries. And there's been an interesting amount of kind of toing and froing since he passed away. And that is Barry Humphries, Dame Edna Everage. He was one of the founders of the Melbourne Comedy Festival. Melbourne Comedy Festival is like one of the big 2 or 3 comedy festivals in the world. There's the Edinburgh Fringe, there's the Melbourne Comedy Festival, and there's obviously the Dunedin Fringe. That's like the trifecta of the biggest 3 comedy festivals in the world. Would that be fair, Chewy?
Yeah, easily.
100%. And so what happened to Barry Humphries is the winner of the comedian or the show of the Fringe of the festival, the comedy festival, was called the Barry. And that got taken off. His name got taken off it a few years ago because Barry Humphries said something about gender that was offensive and it offended some people, and because of that, he had his name taken off the trophy. So one of the founders of the festival, and arguably one of the biggest, if not the biggest, comedy talent, certainly profile-wise, to ever come out of Australia, had his name stripped off the thing because of something he said. I actually don't even know what he said, to be honest. I could probably research it, but it was offensive, even if it was horribly offensive, and it was around gender. And now what's happened is there's been a bit of backlash towards the festival about this and not giving him like a send-off because he was a founder and he was huge in comedy. And now, because they weren't going to do anything, they've decided to do something, and now they're getting kickback because they're doing something from the other side. And it's like they just can't win. Now, I wanted to mention this tonight. Chewy's a stand-up comedian. Barry Humphries is in the world of comedy. I like being around comedy. It's a thing to kind of say he's passed. Also, we wanted to show a little about what he does because he is an utter genius at what he did.
You're looking wonderful. You're ageless.
Well, I'm trying to be ageless. I've had a little work done, but
Have you?
not quite as much as some. No.
Don't let him even say that. Please, keep your eyes that way.
No, but the thing is, you are still recognizable. That's what some people, you know this as well as I do. They go in to see these cosmetic surgeons, and they forget, before the anesthetic takes over, they forget to say, I want people to know who I am when I come out. You know, they go
So, he's certainly a comedian of yesteryear. It's a bit take my mum, or take my wife, please, sort of thing. But there's no question he was an absolute giant in the world of comedy, certainly coming out of Australia. So now the second reason I want to bring this up tonight is this actually does tie into the conversation we're going to have about ANZAC Day. Trust me, I'll feed you baby birds. There is a genuine connection between these two stories, not just that he's from Australia, but to do with, this old timer doing something offensive. When we get to the conversation around the old, I need to say Waitangi Day, ANZAC Day. So, I guess just recognising a comedy figure who's passed over the weekend, and some people are finding it quite a sad thing. Right, we're going to move on, but first of all, let's say thanks to all our patrons. Love to have you guys on board. Thank you for being a part and being with us. If you want to support the work we do, then you can do that by heading to patreon.com/Big Hairy News, patreon.com/Big Hairy News. There's about 7 layers or 7 levels of patrons you can be. Now, I think I said last week that I might do a meetup on Saturday morning. I kind of forgot about that. I apologise. So I'm definitely going to do one this week. So tomorrow, I will send out an invite for a meetup this Saturday morning. So if you're a patron, then this Saturday morning, probably 11 o'clock it normally is, there'll be a virtual meetup. You'll be able to jump on a Zoom call and have a chat about things and all that. I don't know if Chewy, you're available. You can jump in there as well now that you've got some Saturday time. Mm-hmm. So if you want to come, I know that most of you don't want to come talk to me, but I'm sure you all want to come talk to Chewy. So if you want to come talk to Chewy, maybe Saturday morning. But to be that, you have to be a patron, patreon.com/Big Hairy News. And finally, as you can see scrolling along the bottom, another way you can support us is to tell people about us and to share our information. With this podcast we're doing right now, this broadcast becomes an audio podcast. It's on Apple Podcast. It's on Google Podcasts. It's on Spotify. And I would hope and encourage that you might want to subscribe, especially to Apple, only because that's where we follow ourselves on the charts, which actually makes a difference. So if you feel like it, you can subscribe to us on Apple Podcast, anywhere actually. Just by searching #BHN, it'll pop up. And for those times you can't be with us and you might want to listen to us the next morning as you're driving to work or something like that, we'd love to have you on board. Right, John's asking what tier level to do a meetup. To be honest, John, I haven't stopped any tier level at the moment. I think we do have a plan to make a certain tier level be meetup, but because we just genuinely appreciate everyone who's been a patron, I've kind of basically said everyone can come for the time being. That will stop at some stage, but at the moment, if you're what's the smallest one, $5 a month, then you're welcome to come to it. As I said, that will stop at some stage, but I don't know. I'm just grateful for you guys being on board and being involved. So, righty ho, let's get to the conversation around live animal exports. And one of the things that I think a lot of people are asking themselves around this live animal export situation is why? Why is National wanting to do it? Why are they bringing it in? What's it all about? So Nicola Grigg was on, what's this one called? The Nation, News Hub Nation this weekend. And she got a good old grilling. Did that work at all? Not at all? No, not at all. And a big part of the conversation that she had with News Hub Nation was around why, and also about the regulations going to be changed. We'll talk more about the regulations shortly. So let's have a listen to the conversation from the weekend.
Look, nobody's had any stringent regulations they've had to stick to. So if we were to form a government, we want to amend this Animal Welfare Amendment Act that has banned the trade, and we would implement what's called a gold standard. We've been working really, really closely with the Australian...
I like how she says what's called a gold standard, like it's a new kind of phrase. It's like, now, I'll walk you through what a gold standard is, but what it means is a standard that's top notch, what we call a gold standard. And it's like, I think we're going to get, I think it's self-describing, but I think we kind of get that, don't you think?
No,
So
you've lost me. You've lost me there. I need a...
Sorry, you're going to say, I'll cut you off.
No, all good.
All right, I'll keep going.
Exporters on this, and they've implemented it themselves. And the bottom line of that gold standard is that only custom-built ships can land in New Zealand and depart with our animals on board. And I went up to Napier just last week and got on board a Dutch-built vessel called the Galbra Express, and it's a $100 million custom-built ship. And honestly, I was so impressed with it that I've got absolutely no concerns now at all about the safety and welfare of our animals being transferred by sea. And on it we
Certainly.
saw, special drain.
But only 10% of the animals that go to China go on those boats. So why...
Now, to me, because I'm dumb, this was a bit unclear. She does explain it a bit later in a second, Rebecca does. But so only 10% go on these new fandangled boats. That means the other 90% go on boats that are converted from container ships. That means National has to figure out how to get the other 90% of animals onto these boats that can only currently take a capacity of 10% and cost $100 million each. So is that clear? Does that make sense? So National is going to change this law back and then not have the ability to actually do the live exports with these new ships because there's not enough of them. But they're going to change the law.
Are we out here defending and promoting that 10% of the industry, if 90% of the industry is not getting it right and putting animals in those horrific conditions?
Oh, look, I totally agree with you, and it comes down to cost. There are good exporters and good importers who are prepared to go to the expense of using these particular ships. And at the end of the day, they will be the only ships that are allowed to land here. And you've got to look at the big picture, I think, as well, about China's demand for our protein. And the Chinese government, as I understand it, can only sustainably feed about 60% of its population. So they're looking to grow.
But these are arguments put up by the industry as to why it's important to keep it going. But I'm interested in how you were going to do that in a humane way as the animal welfare spokesperson. And so you want to...
I mean, I know this is a kind of silly question, Chewy, but does anyone else find it hilarious that the quote-unquote animal welfare spokesperson is talking about live animal exports? It's not just
it's bizarre.
Yeah, it's a bizarre one, that's for sure.
set up monitoring, this gold standard, as you call it.
Gold standard, what's that?
You want to set up monitoring for the tens of thousands of animals for their 3-week voyage at sea, for their time in Chinese quarantine when they arrive in multiple ports right across China, across their transport, sometimes for hundreds of kilometres, to the place where they will eventually land, these farms, which could be spread right across China. You want to do this for 130,000 animals that were done last year. But you're basically setting up a New Zealand regulatory framework in China.
The answer is?
Yes, we are.
Yes, we are. The answer, did you get that, Chewy? Yes, we are. So not only are they going to change regulations in New Zealand, but they're going to implement regulations in China. The answer was, yes, we are. I'm going to play that again, right, just to make sure we get it.
News for the Chinese.
Yeah, I bet it is.
1,000 animals that were done last year. But you're basically setting up a New Zealand regulatory framework in China.
Yes, we are. And that's to do with our trading relationship with China. As I just said, China wants our protein. So I do believe that China will meet the expectations that we are looking to implement.
So we
I
trust
don't for a
them.
minute believe that all animals are...
We trust them, Chewy. It's a bit like Luxon and Seymour talking about trusting people not to have to be able to isolate for themselves for 7 days. We trust them. We just trust them. They're people and they're going to do the right thing. We trust them. That's what she's saying. We trust China to do the right thing.
She might be overstating how much the Chinese would listen to us on anything.
treated badly in China, and actually I do challenge that perception, because New Zealanders have got to start asking themselves why they think that. The farms that I've observed,
This gets
and
better.
I've certainly
You've
committed
been to the
the
farms in
industry
China?
that were I to be...
Good question.
Beg your pardon?
You've been to the farms in China?
I haven't been. I was just about to say, were I to be the Minister for Animal Welfare, I will go up to China.
So hang on. She's saying that why are we saying these farmers were all bad? Rebecca very smartly goes, so you've been there and you know, and she goes, well, no, but
And have a look at these farms for myself. The other thing that we would implement, apart from regulating for the custom-built ships only, is an importer licensing regime, whereby Chinese importers, Chinese farmers who want our product, have to be certified by MPI that they meet animal welfare standards. So that includes food provision, water provision, the safety of the animals, shelter, and so on and so forth. They will be accredited by our MPI. No, I just want to finish this, sorry, Rebecca.
Certainly.
They will be accredited by our MPI staff in country, and then we can further overlay that with an international accreditation agency like Quality Assure. And so then New Zealanders will have comfort in the fact that New Zealand stock going up to China are going to be treated to the same conditions as they would on farm here in New Zealand.
Well, this is a huge logistics exercise that we're talking about now, both here, but mostly in China, which is another sovereign country which doesn't have any animal welfare laws, as you'll be aware, Nicola.
this is beautiful.
Is it realistic? Is the Chinese government on board? Because MPI says it doesn't have jurisdiction and cannot require a verification of animal welfare after the animals arrive.
Yes, but it can require it, if these farmers and importers were to be seeking certification to import our animals. And equally, there's opportunity.
Yeah, but what that's basically saying is if they can tick all the boxes, we can let them do it. That doesn't, I mean, look, I'll tell you a little story. Secret time, as Bert Kreischer says. When I got my first mortgage, I was married at the time, and the mortgage broker sat down in our house. My then wife was pregnant with our first child. And the mortgage broker said to me, planning on having children in the future? And at that time, we already had bought a baby buggy and it was sitting in the laundry. And the response from me was, yeah, at some stage. And I ticked the box and we got the mortgage, even though we didn't fulfill the criteria exactly. Now, it was never a problem after that, but I knew that if they knew there was a baby going to be along in 6 months, that might have impacted our chances. So in other words, we ticked the boxes, but we didn't necessarily follow through on what the expectations were other than paying the mortgage was obviously the big one. But you know what I'm saying? If you tick a box, doesn't mean you're necessarily then going to follow through on it. So I think that's the point that they're making. And National sounds very naive to basically be saying over and over and over and over and over again, we can trust China. Or, more importantly, we can trust the farming sector in China to do the right thing, because that's what they're doing. Because after you've got regulation, I mean, I'm sure lots of farms in New Zealand and lots of businesses, full stop, fulfill regulations or fulfill criteria to do things, yet still don't do them. How many fucking restaurants do you go into that's got a C rating and not an A because they don't clean as well as they're supposed to? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it just sounds like they're creating a system that is absolutely full of loopholes.
Yep. And I think there's
bureaucracy.
one last beautiful bit to come from this, talking about going up to America, because someone's mentioned in the chat about the animal standards in America as well. And that will, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Chewy, but we'll just play this. It's only 35 seconds and then we'll be back.
For MPI to work in with our offshore counterparts, particularly on the likes of Chinese quarantine facilities, as you've suggested. And again, I just want to push back on this perception that Chinese farmers are cruel to their animals, or the Chinese system is cruel to its animals, because I think that is a massive, massive assumption.
Well, that's not a perception, it's just a fact that there are no animal welfare laws in China, something that you will be aware of.
But nor are there in America. That's the interesting thing. There is not an Animal Welfare Act in America.
Do you know the saying, hoisted by one's own petard? you are going to see a real world example of that. You ready for this? You ready for this? Here we go.
No animal welfare laws in China, something that you will be aware of.
But nor are there in America. That's the interesting thing. There is not an Animal Welfare Act in America, and yet New Zealanders don't seem to mind our animals going up there. So you've really got to question our underlying assumptions
Do we
here.
export live animals to America? We don't, do we?
Not as far as I'm aware,
No,
but that's the point.
So that is the point.
People don't challenge it.
But that's because we're not exporting them there, Nicola.
There you go. So that would be the dictionary
devastating
definition of hoisted by one's own petard. Now, the whole thing started up with her talking about regulations and basically saying we're going to re-regulate the sector, which of course raises the question, based on what Mr. Luxon said within the last 2 weeks. On the red tape front, it proposes requiring both local and central government to scrap 2 existing regulations if they intend to introduce a new one, and setting up a review body to advise on regulations. So there you go, John. Sounds like about 20 regulations have been added. So that means 40, according to their law, have to go. 40 regulations somewhere are going to disappear to start up live exports again, Chewy.
I just love that they've trotted someone out that is just like unprepared.
Yeah.
Like she's read her breast, she knows the talking points that she's got to hit, and then has just walked into that thing about America.
It was really dumb.
And like the live, like you're talking about, like 10% of the ships are custom built and they're all luxurious for the animals, and they'll love it. It'll be like a cruise for them, all the way to China. And then 90% of them are floating rust buckets, floating concentration camps. The whole thing doesn't make any sense, right? We're sending live animals to China. It's the same thing that we do with other products here. We just give people the raw materials and then they create something of more value. Why can't we do that?
And look, this is the other thing, right? Let's just repaint this idea about the 90%. Let's just put a little example down here. The city that you live in has 100 buses. Yeah, 90 of them are dilapidated, broken, holes in the floor. People who go in there are breathing carbon monoxide, etc., etc., etc. 10 out of those 100 are mint. They're electric. They're state of the art. They they kiss you on the ass as you're going through the door. There's an electric thing that blows air in your face. They're the most amazing things in the world. What they're proposing is to come in as a government and ban the 90 buses that are full of holes and are causing you to do carbon monoxide poisoning, and only keep the 10 that are working. But those 10 have to first either fit all those other customers that go in the 100 buses in them, or the new then potential national government is going to require 90 of these other buses that cost $100 million each to be built for these exports to happen, or for the bus rides to happen. I can tell you what I think the likely scenario. The likely scenario is it'll be like a yes. Within the next 12 years, we expect all of these boats to be replaced, and we'll just continue on as we are right now. I mean, I can't see any other way, because another part of this interview, I think she said there was either 25 or 45 of these boats in the world right now. That's it, the whole world. And so therefore, if there's 5 or 10 of them operating out of New Zealand, that means there's 90 or 100 of the other boats going. So how long is it going to go from not just 45 of these boats around the world, but enough to give New Zealand access to 100 of them? You know what I'm saying? It's just utterly ridiculous.
Does anyone think that this is an actual legitimate, serious policy from them? Like,
well, I just read somewhere in the
I get the sense from this that there is no intention to follow through with it. I got this a couple of times with them as they're coming up with stuff that is just not going to fly. And it's almost like, well, we're all comfortable in opposition here. We're not ready to be a government. We'll just half-ass it.
That's interesting.
It's like, I mean, it's a tiny percentage of our exports.
Yeah.
It's got massive negative connotations for a lot of people. Like, it's a barbaric process. There's not a public outcry of people going, oh no, we've got to keep our exports up. They're like, everyone's happy to let this go.
Yeah.
So who's this policy for?
Yeah, exactly. Why? There's one other clip I'm going to play, and we're going to keep trucking because we're actually coming up half past already, and we've got a lot to get through tonight. Is this just, and look, you know me, Chewy, I had a big conversation last night. I do feel uncomfortable when I refer to someone's intellect and kind of question it, because I think it's sort of a lowest common denominator. Go, oh, you're a bit thick. But you have to ask the question. Let's be generous and say, when someone is so ill-informed that they seem to, and I'm saying seem to because it's not a legislation, but they seem to not even understand announcements made recently in the sector about not allowing bobby calf killing anymore. So I'll show you that first. So Fonterra announced that they're ordering an end to killing bobby calves on dairy farms. Yeah, Fonterra has ordered its farms to stop killing bobby calves on their farms unless there is a humane reason to do so. Now, obviously, there's a bit of wiggle room there. They might say a humane reason is because there's too many of them, which means nothing will change. But it's not a legislation. Fonterra has ordered it, and it seems that Nicola Grigg hasn't had that memo because she talks about all the bobby calves that are going to be killed if we don't do this. So have a listen.
The other part is we have an enormous problem now here in New Zealand with an excess of 130,000 bobby calves a year, which are excess to the internal supply system. Now, these tend to be the second tier grade of genetics and livestock that at the moment, quite frankly, are going to be culled. Why would you not take this opportunity to give these animals a long and productive life by putting them on a boat, a custom-built boat, where they're treated really, really well on the...
This is the other thing. You know the Shakespearean saying, methinks she does, methinks the lady doth protesteth too much?
Yes.
Just have a listen to how many times she talks about them being looked after really, really well. And just does that make you think that maybe there's a hypnotising act going on here? They're going to be very, very well looked after. They will be very, very well looked after.
Life by putting them on a boat.
And remember, they're going to have a long and happy life being on a boat going to China and being killed for meat. That's their long and happy life. They're going to have a long and happy life being cut up in China after being on a boat for several weeks. Don't look too deeply.
The long and productive life by putting them on a boat, a custom-built boat, where they're treated really, really well on the water up to the destination farm, where again they're treated really well on a destination farm so they can live a full and productive life and feed a nation that is looking to build its rapidly growing population with good, safe, healthy New Zealand protein.
This sounds exactly what the industry is saying, Nicola, but I just have...
So there you go. But the other thing about this long and productive life to be eaten. I mean, I don't know too much about the industry. I know friends in Huntly who have a beef farm, and they don't live their full life and then get put on the plate. They live for a couple of years, they get fed up, and then they get killed and eaten. So I don't know what this whole thing about long and productive life and who've been looked after very, very well. It just, I can see someone said Jedi mind trap. It's like, these are not the bobby calves you're looking for. It seems a bit like that, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Sure.
absolutely. And other things that should, don't forget that we are propping up China's population. Like they can only feed 60% of their population, and without our New Zealand concentration ships for animals, cruise lines for animals, 40% of the Chinese population is going to die. It's just
our fault.
Crazy.
Yeah,
it's all our fault. Like I still don't see who she's appealing to. I don't like the absolute, like, if we're talking about our farming industry, like, you see farmers quite often go, oh, people don't understand where the food comes from. It's because we've got politicians like that speak about that. Like, the bobby calf thing is gross. Like, anything to do with the dairy industry, that is one thing that really sticks out of my mind. If you've ever been stuck in traffic in the rural area with a farmer taking a trailer full of dead bobby calves stacked up like firewood down to the works, you're staring at that for half an hour. It really makes you think about your dairy intake, I tell you that much.
Yeah, and look, the other thing is, I completely forgot what I was going to say. Bobby calves. It'll come back to me. you want to show some texts? I mean, it'll come back to me what I was just about to think. But you were just talking about something really interesting, and I got lost in your eyes. That's terrible when that happens.
I am dreamy. The sunset here says she says that China wants high quality New Zealand quality. Then says that they welcome our second grade low tier bobby calves.
Yeah,
like just can't keep that straight.
I remember my point. This was the point I was going to make. She was talking about China wanting our protein. China wanting our protein. I haven't yet heard a reason as to why there needs to be live exports. Because frozen would be fine. China can still get our protein. So that was the point I was just thinking that jumped out of my head there. So there can be humanely killed in New Zealand. They can be frozen and sent to China. They still get our protein. So that's off the table. That argument's off the table. So what is it? What's left? Why they have to be live?
Like New Zealand's export farming has been always built on sending frozen products overseas. We invented it to send meat back to the old country. Those freezing works here in New Zealand, they provide jobs for New Zealanders. We can then look after, be responsible for animal welfare from the farm to the works, and then we ship everything overseas. We're adding to the quality. We get to gold standard everything. The moment we hand off to another country and go, well, there you go. Like, I don't see the benefit. Where is the added value in that?
Yeah. Yeah, well, there's a high price on the meat when it turns up live, but so what? It's like, I mean, yeah, so what? There's a high price for 96 fuel over 91, but everyone puts 91 in their car. You can get a high price if you want to.
Tiny fraction of our exports.
Hey, is there anything in the chat we want to get out there before we move on to what everyone's here for?
Peter King, 10% on a cruise. Miss Grigg, 90% sailing in a bucket. Yeah, it just makes no sense to me. I think this is either just Labor's done this thing, so we want to undo it, and now we're going to hang our hat on it.
Yeah.
Or it could be, hey, we've got a really wealthy donor that is in the live export business.
Let me just say as well, Vicky said something here about China wants us breeding cows, not meat. But then if they want the cows for breeding, right? If they want the actual cows to be alive and live long and productive and not be turned into meat, then that's a limited market. There is that literal saying about cows is why would you Why would you buy them? Why would you sell the cow if you're giving the milk away for free? Or why would someone buy the cow if you're giving the milk away for free? So if we're sending over cows there to then just become part of like Chinese farms and productions themselves, then we're selling them the production as well. It doesn't seem like a particularly good business decision, business party.
No, they can buy the genetic material, and it doesn't involve floating concentration camps.
And then quietly, if they have cows from New Zealand who are then producing in China, because this is how migration works, then that's not New Zealand protein anymore. That's Chinese protein.
I mean,
when someone moves from China to New Zealand and becomes a Kiwi, then we don't think of them as, well, some people do, unfortunately, but we don't think of them as Chinese anymore. They become Kiwis. So this argument as well about Kiwi protein, well, that means we keep the IP of it. Then it stays Kiwi protein.
Yeah. Just makes no sense.
All right. Hey, let's keep going, shall we? And this is the story that everyone's heard about today, and most people are celebrating. We'll have a look at the story first of all, and then we'll get into the details.
Major shakeups today at three media giants. NBC's Universal CEO has stepped down. Tucker Carlson, a popular right-wing media host, is out at Fox News, and CNN anchor Don Lemon is out after 17 years. CNN's Oliver Darcy joins us now. Oliver, let's start with
Oliver.
Fox. Do we know why they decided to take Carlson off the network's highly rated show?
A shocking development over at Fox. Tucker Carlson was the highest rated single host over at that network. He's been hosting the 8 p.m. show for several years, and a sudden announcement today from Fox, I'll read you part of it, announcing his departure. It was very short. It just says, Fox News Media and Tucker Carlson have agreed to part ways. We thank him for his service to the network as a host and prior to that as a contributor. And it goes on to say that Carlson's last program already aired. It aired on Friday. Even though Carlson on Friday said that he looked forward to greeting viewers back on Monday. Now, of course, we should point out that Tucker Carlson was one of the most extreme hosts over on that channel, and he sowed a lot of distrust in the legitimacy of the 2020 election. And, of course, this announcement is coming just days after Fox News settled that Dominion voting systems lawsuit for a staggering amount of money, the highest ever defamation settlement in the history of U.S. media that's known. And so it's hard to disconnect those two events, but the network and Carlson are not connecting them themselves. And I should also note that we've reached out to Carlson several times today, and he has not responded to comment requests.
Well, there was also a big development today at our own network, CNN parting ways with anchor Don Lemon.
Another stunning announcement. This comes earlier today. This came actually in an email to CNN staffers from CEO Chris Licht over at CNN. I'll read you what he said in his email. He said, CNN and Don have parted ways. Don will forever be a part of the CNN family. And we thank him for his contributions over the past 17 years. And it goes on. But Don Lemon came out and he was more explicit. He said that the network had fired him, and then he really lashed out and said that he was hoping that someone in management would have had the decency to tell him directly about this firing. And CNN PR then put out a statement separately saying that what Don Lemon had said was not accurate, that Don Lemon did have the opportunity to meet with management. So there's a back and forth playing out over there at CNN in public as well.
So there you go. They're the two big stories. The third one we're not really going to focus on so much as an executive. Moving on. But before we keep going, Chewy, open thoughts. Any thoughts in the chat about the news from that today?
What have we got? Yes. Straight out of Succession, which I've just started watching. All of those people seem horrible. Bradley here goes, what's up with it all going down on the same day?
Purely coincidental from the reading I've been doing.
And I think that's all about Tucker so far. As far as my own thoughts, good. And I await with horror for whatever his next move is. I think Russia Today offered him a slot and said that he's always welcome in Moscow.
I realize we've already mentioned Star Wars once tonight, but there's the obligatory mentioning of it twice. And when Obi-Wan gets struck down by Darth Vader, says he's going to be more powerful than he can ever imagine. I mean, there's absolutely a possibility with Tucker that will be the case. That with his moving on, he may be more powerful than anyone could ever imagine. Meaning a whole bunch more viewership, a whole less, believe it or not, but less regulation. Like less control and just more fringe. I mean, what was his name? The talkback host who died a couple of years ago, big round American. I can't think of.
Oh yes, yeah. I know the one that you're talking about. But
you watch the chat. Tell me who it is. Super quick. Right wing talkback host, radio talkback host in America, whose name is eluding me right now because I'm dumb. I'm just waiting for the chat to tell me who it is.
Worst. Oh, it's right on the tip of my tongue. Is it?
Yeah, same.
L name.
So anyway, we will now show you some of the commiserations put out to Tucker Carlson by the Lincoln Project today. Very sad they were. Yeah, Rush. That's right. What's his surname? Was Rush. Someone Rush Limbaugh.
Yes.
Rush Limbaugh. Thank you, Carl.
Thank you, Carl.
Everyone at the same time. Yes. Thank you, Pat. All right. So, commiserations were put out to Tucker by the Lincoln Project today.
Fox News Media and Tucker Carlson have mutually agreed to part ways. Tucker's last show was this past Friday.
Video.
It does, doesn't it?
You take a collection of dumb, desperate people in middle age, hoping to keep on to their stupid TV jobs. You add scripts and some hairspray, and they just repeat the lies for you. It was not even close to an insurrection. Nicotine frees your mind, and THC makes you compliant and passive. Testicle that's crazy. Talking to Trump is one of the great joys, one of the great animal joys.
Iraq is a crappy place filled with a bunch of, semi-literate primitive monkeys.
Shut up, racist! Our civilization is superior. Let's pretend for a sec that our country had a news media that was interested in bringing you the news. What were these sheep doing when you apprehended them? They call you the egg hustler. Leprechauns exist not just on cereal boxes. M&Ms will not be satisfied until every last cartoon character is deeply unappealing and totally androgynous.
I love women, but they're extremely primitive. They're basic.
I gotta go. You should stick to the thigh-high boots. You're better at that. Maybe the orange M&M is a secret sexist himself. Your mask is making me uncomfortable. Why shouldn't I root for Russia? Which I am. I'm not a Putin defender, despite what you may have heard. The end of the Lincoln Project. We can all celebrate that.
We want to thank Tucker Carlson for his service to the network.
I'm sorry, I just got to take a quick break and go cry in a closet while squeezing a stuffed animal. Rick Wilson? Ugh.
I get the feeling that someone in the editing suite of the Lincoln Project had particular joy in doing that today.
That laugh, that real human, authentic laugh.
Shall I play Heather? Do you want me to play Heather?
No.
Okay, sorry.
Play Heather?
So then the question becomes, why did they get rid of him? Now, I think in general, the answer is fairly obvious, and that's it's a commercial reason. Now, remember, they could be wrong, but obviously people up the chain have decided that keeping him was more of a liability financially than losing him. That's what they've decided. Now, you've just had the Dominion lawsuit. You've got a Smartmatic lawsuit coming up, which is worth $2.7 billion. They've just paid out about $800 million on a $1.6 billion lawsuit. Following those things, they might have to pay out $1.3 billion for the Smartmatic one as well. And there's also a private case, which it talks about here. So this is Los Angeles Times asking why is he being fired. Sources told the Times that Carlson's exit is related to a discrimination lawsuit filed by Abby Grossberg, the producer who was fired by the network last month. Carlson's senior executive producer, Justin Wells, had also been terminated, according to insiders. Grossberg was moved off Sunday morning features with Maria Bartiromo, and on to Tucker Carlson tonight, where she alleged she was bullied and subjected to anti-Semitic comments, according to a lawsuit in New York. In deposition testimony, the former Fox News producer said she was also coerced by company lawyers into giving misleading answers in the Dominion defamation case against the network. Fox News denied the claim and said that it was terrible for terminated. She was terminated for disclosing privileged company information. So that's why they say he's gone. But my experience is working in media circles, management will have gone, right, here's two columns. If we keep Tucker, this is how much we'll earn. If we lose Tucker, this is how much we'll lose. And if they if the discrepancy is not enough, like if they're going to lose less than they earn by getting rid of him, then they'll get rid of him. If they're going to make more than they lose by keeping him, then they'll keep him. And I think Fox made about $1.3 billion in profits last year. They've already given away $800 billion, and there's another $2.7 billion coming. So they've got about half a billion dollars in profits from last year. That could be eaten up by a $2.7 billion lawsuit. And then there's this private suit about, those private suits normally go for 20 or 30 million. As ironic as that sounds, Terry, that's not going to be the big thing. But it's because he's a liability. That's the only reason that they would get rid of him, because he is a liability, because that would be the only reason to do it.
I mean, the thing is, like the most recent stuff with Trump, with his text messages being leaked and that sort of thing. Yeah. It seems to me that Tucker Carlson was a good soldier for Fox. Like, he brought in the viewers, he brought in
he was the highest rating.
Yeah, he brought in the notoriety. He was quite happy to continue to parrot talking points about Trump while very clearly detesting the man.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. What sort of dirtbag do you have to be for Rupert Murdoch to go, this guy's a bad seed?
Yeah.
Get rid of it.
Let's really quickly, because I want to continue with Tucker for a bit more, because that's obviously the bigger story. But just quickly, why did Don Lemon go? Well, CNN anchor Don Lemon has hid out at the network after his firing, which came after accusations of misogyny and misbehavior. I'm stunned, Lemon wrote on Twitter, saying he was told by his agent he'd been let go. CNN said it parted ways with Lemon, who co-hosted its morning show, saying we wish him well. That morning show was an absolute nightmare, if you've ever seen how uncomfortable the situation was. It follows on-air remarks by Lemon in which he said Republican Nikki Haley, 51, was not in her prime. That was, I think, during the morning show, and that didn't go down well. So he's gone for lots of reasons. Let's stick with Tucker right now, because obviously some of the big news is, what is the MAGA world saying when it comes to Tucker leaving? Well, here's Donald Trump Jr., what he's saying about the firing of Tucker Carlson.
Tucker Carlson out at Fox News. Your reaction?
I mean, I think it changes things permanently. That's one of the few voices in the Republican Party that would call out the nonsense from GOP senators, governors, and otherwise. An actual thought leader in conservatism. And the whole thing is it's actually mind blowing to me, and I guess and to everyone else, given what you've seen happen to Fox's market cap in the last few hours.
Now, speaking of that, this is what's happened to their market cap, i.e. their share price. And you can see if you can pick where Tucker was, with the announcement of Tucker being fired came out. I mean, you found it's subtle. You might be able to see that. So that's happened there. Going on, what's the guy's name? So I'll go to the next one. It's that one. J.D. Vance, who I think is a senator or a governor, or I get those two mixed up. He says Tucker is the most courageous person in American media. We've got Marjorie Taylor Greene. Cable news is about to be taught a powerful lesson after Fox News caved to the woke mob and fired Tucker Carlson. Americans know it's a little bit like if you say fuck enough, it loses all of its meaning, And that woke thing is now, that's absolutely what it's done. Americans no longer blindly watch the news like they did decades ago. They only have to watch the ones who have coverage to tell the truth. Americans are about to quit. Now, on those points, she might have a valid thing. People are already turning off, and it might cause them to turn off more quickly. Cat Turd, who apparently is said to be a far-right tastemaker. He's such a tastemaker. He puts up tweets like this. Boy turns in a bag he found with $12,000 cash inside it. I pray my kids aren't this fucking stupid. That's the kind of level of taste making that Cat Turd does, but he says the end of Fox News, which I think is something that's echoed by many, many people. Now, I guess the last thing about this, and this is the Smartmatic lawsuit, we don't have to go too much through that. Media company is also facing a $2.7 billion defamation lawsuit filed by another voting technology company, Smartmatic, that alleges Fox broadcast lies that decimated its business. And that is probably completely accurate and true, Chewy, and that could have been another reason why they got rid of him. Finally, as I breathe, the last theory that I've heard bandying about a little bit, and I put it out on Twitter today, is maybe Fox News has just released Donald Trump's running partner. Maybe that's part of the reason why. That's the last one.
Oh, gross. I hate that.
Well, there's always been the talk about him wanting to run for president. Maybe he's going to. Maybe it's a plan. I don't think so, but maybe because of it, he'll throw his hat in the ring. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, you've read this in a different way. DIY Guru put in chat, it won't happen. Trump is the reason that Carlson's gone. And I thought that might be referring to, he's shitty at those leaked texts. But yeah, now you're saying if he's Trump's running mate. Oh, yuck.
Be a fun ride. Be a fun ride watching America turn into another dumpster fire again.
Oh,
might be good.
That's the mental equivalent of pulling matted hair out of my drain. Like, it's yucky. I don't like it.
Yeah. All right. Now that's me wrapped up for pretty much the night show. We're going to talk about ANZAC Day now and the idea of commemoration versus glorification. I don't know if you've got some stuff to share with us, but if you do, should we do this officially? Like when we're doing this? There you go. Look, big boy reversal on the right. There you go.
Big reversal. Yeah. So as we've mentioned a couple of times, like ANZAC has a lot of meaning for me. I was in the cadets through my teens and that sort of thing, and we always went to ANZAC Day, and in Timaru we did the Cenotaph Guard and that sort of thing, and it was always drummed into me the importance of it, and obviously all the stories from Gallipoli and elsewhere in World War I, World War II, all of that sort of stuff. As I mentioned at the top of the show, it's 108 years since so many generations have died out, and the risk that we run is that it all becomes myth.
Right.
And the term I like is that ANZAC is our national myth. It's almost like our founding.
When you say myth, are you saying that the truth may turn into more of a story, or are you saying myth as in it's something that didn't really happen?
No, I mean, yeah, your first point there,
right?
That we start to polish the bits that we like, and we start to
mythologize it. Yeah, got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
We start to ignore the uncomfortable truths and that sort of thing. And I've seen a few people on Twitter today sort of sharing some of the things that aren't recognized, that people don't want to acknowledge. And the pushback that they get from some people is as like, how dare you do this today, this most solemn day.
Yeah.
And I, as someone that thinks Anzac Day is really important, I disagree with that enormously. If we
you disagree with questioning them doing it today.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. Like it's like that thing whenever there's a shooting over in the States and someone says, oh, maybe we should get rid of guns because this keeps happening, and people go, oh, you're politicizing this.
Don't
like,
talk about this today.
War is politics at the end of the day, you know. And throughout New Zealand's history, I think we're batting about 50-50 for every, you know, just struggle. Like World War II, you know, we were fighting Nazism and all the horrible things that they were doing there, and it was a grand world struggle, the forces of justice against the evil Nazis and the Japanese and that sort of thing. For every one of those, there's ones where we haven't been on the right side, like Malaya and Vietnam. And World War One is its own special case because it was a clusterfuck.
Yeah.
Like there was no justice in that struggle. But when I talk about it being, you know, almost I see people refer to Gallipoli as sort of the birth of modern New Zealand, when we started to realize that maybe the mother country didn't have our best interests at heart.
Right.
You know, we were just used in that struggle.
The boys up the front to take the cannon fodder and to waste the ammunition of the opposition.
Yeah, absolutely. For a poorly planned expedition, you know, there's the thing about Winston Churchill planning it on the back of a tourist map, that sort of thing, and we'll just chuck the colonials in there. That'll sort them out, and the British are further up. And I think in part that's true. But also, if you look at the government of the time, that was very definitely like where England goes, we go. You know, that wasn't us sort of making our own choice and blazing our own path. And even when it came to World War II, you know, the Australians and the New Zealanders were in North Africa fighting for England. And then Australia pulled back because they realized the Japanese were coming down. We stayed in North Africa. You know, we didn't come back to defend our own country or defend the Australians. We stayed where England said that we needed to be.
It feels a little bit like, you know, when you've got a kid who is 12, 13, they do everything mum and dad say, they love mum and dad, they never question mum and dad, then they turn 13, 14, 15 and they become demons. It's like, but that's the time they start to go, hang on, why do I have to do that? Maybe what you're saying is 1913 was our beginning of our teenage years as when it comes to a country. Kind of going, hang on, we're not so sure about this. Why? But why?
But yeah, you know, if we look at before World War One, even like there's a spin-off's done an excellent story today about the first ANZACs, and that was Australians coming over here to fight in the land wars. That's something we don't really want to talk about or commemorate. Maybe we don't even really want to acknowledge that happened. You know, we don't do a lot of talking about New Zealanders going off to suppress the Boer uprising in South Africa. Now, again, we were doing that for Mother England and Empire and that sort of thing. It wasn't, you know, defending justice. It was putting down a rebellion. And we've done that a couple of times in our overseas military history. We did that in Malaya. We did that in Vietnam as well. Today, I sat down and watched an excellent movie, absolutely perfect for Anzac Day. It's an Australian film called Danger Close about the Vietnam War. And I think it's almost perfect for what we're talking about because it was New Zealand and Australian troops fighting shoulder to shoulder. But it was in somebody else's war. It was an internal struggle that America and its allies decided to get involved in because of an overall theory that if a country fell to communism, then it would carry on like a domino effect.
Right, yeah.
So you've got that overarching thing of a really muddled, why justification of why we're there, what are we fighting for, that sort of thing. And you can have those conversations. Was it right for New Zealand to be in Vietnam? While still acknowledging the individual bravery and achievements of the people that actually had to do the fighting.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to throw one other one in there, because there's not many people who know about this. I know about this because we studied the play when I was at maybe even intermediate school, but certainly secondary school, probably St. Peter's College. And that's this. Do you know much about the Featherston prisoner of war camp, Chewy?
Yes. I've been out there and seen the memorial. So
outside of Wairarapa, there'll be people watching right now who've never heard of this before, and I get that, because I've only ever had an interaction with this story once, and there's a play called Shuriken, as in the throwing star, Shuriken. And that's a play about this, and I did, with my English teacher at school, I did this as a play, so that's when I learnt about it. That New Zealand, in 1943, had a Japanese prisoner of war camp for Japanese soldiers. Just outside the Wairarapa town of Featherston, a memorial garden marks the site of a Second World War incident. It's an interesting way to use the word incident, isn't it? That resulted in the death of 48 Japanese prisoners of war, POWs, and one guard. So this is something, when Chewy says, it's just, not to make it sound a racial connotation, but whitewashing is a term. We don't want to whitewash everything. And it's a little bit like, this is going to sound, but this is a really strange sort of tangent. Segue is better than tangent because it's the same topic. But going back to the Barry Humphries conversation, I was listening to a podcast in the weekend. There was someone talking about the sandwich generation. And I'm Gen X. Are you Gen Y, Chewy, or are you still just on Gen X? You're in that cusp, aren't you?
I will die on this hill. I am an elder millennial.
Okay. So Gen Y, Gen X are sandwich generations, because we're the meat in the middle of like the boomers and the zoomers, right? And this person that I was listening to on the podcast was a really interesting perspective about what the sandwich generation needs to do. Now, if you're a millennial, you could be a sandwich generation between the X's and the Zoomers. If you're a Zoomer, you could be a sandwich generation between the millennials and the whatever comes after Zoomers. So, we can all be the sandwich generation. But what the sandwich generation needs to do is honor the generation that came before and bless the generation that comes after. Now, I know of someone, no longer with us, but I knew of a very, very elderly person. She said horrifically racially charged things about Japanese people her whole life in her 90s. And if you heard it on the street, you'd be like, oh, you racist this and racist that. Then when you hear her story that her husband was in a Japanese prisoner of war camp for basically the length of the war and came back a changed person and was never the same man again, basically PTSD ruined him, they didn't have it back then. You can take a step back, and whilst you heard some horrific things, you can understand why they're being said. You can be gracious, and you can honour the generation that comes before, and you can bless the generation that comes after. You can actually open a path for. You can be gracious towards. You can help work out. And I hear that a lot, and the reason I'm aligning this to what we're talking about now, but also the Barry Humphries thing, is really old people really struggle with some of the new concepts in society today. And my perspective is, rather than shitting on them, honouring the generation that went before, even if they're wrong, giving them grace because they don't understand, and blessing the next generation by making them be able to forge their own path into this new world. A lot of these conversations, I'm not going to talk about gender tonight, but I remember having a conversation around gender and talking about third wave feminism versus second wave feminism. There's a saying that if I can see further, it's because I'm standing on the shoulders of giants. We seem to have a generation today that stands on the shoulders of giants, of those that went before them, and rather than honouring them, it shits on their head. So Germaine Greer is a perfectly good example. Feminist, groundbreaking feminist through the 70s and 80s, made so many strivings to help women get to where they are today in their feminism. But because she's got some views that many consider to be abhorrent, and I don't want to get into that debate, she's seen as the enemy of everything. You can still accept that some people have things wrong, have things skewed, are not right with things, but honour the generation that went before and bless the generation that comes after. So Barry Humphries, I think, can still have his name on that award, right? We can still honour him, but we can also bless the next generation by going, he didn't understand. If he died in 1950 and he had those views, it wouldn't be a problem, because that would have been back then. It's only because it's in this transitional period that it's a problem. I feel like with the war question, even if we disagree, even if we have opinions on war and armed conflict and shooting and killing people, we can still honour the people that have gone before. Those 18-year-olds I was talking about at the start of the show that didn't know what they were getting themselves into, that thought they were doing the right thing, that were going off for an adventure and to protect our liberty, even though they might have been wrong in all of their perspectives, right? And they still had to line up a gun and shoot and kill another 18-year-old that had no ill will against them, that they'd never wronged and never wronged one another. We can still look at that and go, man, I don't know about this. I really don't know about this, but we can honour what they did. And what we can do is we can bless the next generation by making sure that we never fucking get into another situation where we have to send off our next 18-year-olds to do this again. That's how I kind of feel about it, Chewy.
Yeah, I remember going to see the Auckland War Memorial Museum just up in the Domain, and they've got a hall of names, starting, I believe, from the Boer War, maybe the Land Wars, and then moving through each major conflict with people that had died from the Auckland region in war.
Yeah.
And there's hundreds and hundreds of names, just these big granite panels. And I was working my way through those, and then you get to a blank one at the end, and it just says these brass letters in it that says, "Let these panels never be filled."
Yeah, fuck, yeah.
And that was like a gut punch the first time I saw that. But it really illustrates a difference between how we commemorate here in Australasia compared to, say, Armistice Day or Memorial Day in the States.
Mm-hmm.
We have the singular choice to use our National Commemoration Day to commemorate a loss, a failure,
mm-hmm.
in an operation that wasn't of our design or objective. And that, I think, has changed the whole thing. It's not a commemoration of a great victory or a triumph or anything like that. And so, like we were talking at the start of the show, do you say, Happy ANZAC Day? It's not, because it's a mourning.
Yeah,
it's a mourning. It's like a funeral. It casts a reflective note on things that they don't have in say the UK. They will talk about World War I and how horrible it is, but they won. They won at the end of the day. They beat the Huns. It's triumphant. Whereas our one is anchored across a horrible, wasteful loss. And I think that's a really important part of how we should proceed commemorating these things. Yes, we have fought tyrants, we've fought for justice, but we've also been the oppressor. We've also done horrible things. One of the things that I saw on Twitter that someone was pushing back against was this, where New Zealand soldiers participated in massacring a village in Palestine. Now, this is on the official ANZAC Day World War 100 website. And I think that's enormously important that we look at this as well. And of course, this has happened again more recently in Afghanistan. There were New Zealand actions that were extremely questionable, and we participated in some bad things overseas. Same in Malaya, same in Vietnam. And I think in the chat here is a very, very good point. Why do we believe that history and attitudes are static? If we just stick a pin in here and go, right, we've decided what we think about this and we won't look at it anymore. I think it's really important to keep looking at things and reevaluating them. During World War I, conscientious objectors were jailed, sent to France, basically tortured. And it's only recently that we've decided that that's worth remembering. With a monument. And even when they put that monument up to Baxter here in Dunedin, there was the original thing was to put it up in Wellington, and there was enormous pushback against that. 100 years on, the man was a coward. And it's still a divisive thing to talk about here. But I think I think anybody that can look at what a waste World War I is, and then put yourself in those shoes to go, would you go and fight in this, knowing what we know now? Or is he the brave man to stand against the herd and go, no, it's not right? The same reflection when we talk about how people were treated after Vietnam.
Baby killers
being people throwing buckets of pig's blood at the soldiers coming back from that war. As someone that has marched in anti-war marches and that sort of thing, that reaction just disgusts me.
All right. Hey, well, that was a good little chat for tonight. Before we head off, we've got some breaking news. It is the second time in a row. Well, actually, someone said that there's been an announcement just made, and I've just put it into Google, and I haven't had anything come up. So let's just see if we can have a look. Some news about Joe Biden.
Oh, I just see that comment. Oh no, if that's true, I'm sure it is.
I'm just going to go past hour. 5 minutes ago. There we go. Bloomberg.com. Bloomberg.com. Oh, I got to take it back off, isn't I? There we go. President Joe Biden makes it official. He's running again in 2024. President makes a formal announcement to run for a second term. No major Democratic contender has emerged to challenge Biden.
That's a mistake.
Huge mistake. Now, I mean, I guess the one upside for it, if it's Trump and he beats him again, that will be hilarious. but I'm not so flippant as to say let's do this for a bit of a laugh. But it looks like this has just been announced right now. That was 5 minutes ago, I think. Let me go back.
Good eyes, Bradley.
Yeah. Bradley. Who did? Was it Ben last week who gave us a tip? So in the past hour, I'm trying to hit refresh again, see if something else comes up. Joe Biden, Financial Times. Joe Biden announces it. Let's accept cookies for now. Announces it. Joe Biden has officially announced that he will seek to run for a second term in the White House, ending months of speculation and firing the starting gun of the 2024 re-election campaign that could result in a rematch of the 2020 clash with Donald Trump. So there you go. So I guess that's something we will follow up for tomorrow. Maybe I'll try and get some commentators on to have a bit of a chat about that. As for right now, a huge thanks to all our patrons. Remember, if you're not a patron, you can't be involved this weekend with our meetup, and our meetup is virtual. So anywhere in the world, if you are a patron, you can join us at 11 a.m. on Saturday morning. Tomorrow, I'll do my best, if I get around to it, to send out an invite to everybody. And if you become a patron between now and, Saturday morning, I'll get the invite sent off to you as well. So if you want to be a patron to support what we're doing, love to have you on board. And if you want to come along to the meetup this week, Saturday morning, New Zealand time, then the only way you can do it is to be a patron. Patreon.com/Big Hairy News. All right. Well, thank you for the chat. Thank you for your thoughts there, Chewy, around ANZAC Day. You are certainly more, I don't think up to play is the right word, but certainly it's a wheelhouse that you're far more
invested soaked in
than I am. But that's it. Is there anything else you want to mention out there? Anything else in the chat you want to actually put in there? Or
I do want to pop up one thing that just came across my feed.
Sure.
This is a guy that I follow. He's Kiwi currently over in Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he sums it up for me quite well. RIP to all ANZACs, the past and also the present. Freedom is not free. Making the ultimate sacrifice of not passing on a war to your children, lest we forget. And that is a list of the ANZACs that have died in Ukraine.
Yeah. Very good. I wish you hadn't said freedom's not free, because I think that's a line from Team America, and now I've got that song going around in my head. But the salient point he makes is completely clear. Well, that's an interesting point. Freestyle just talked about Harris being unpopular. I wonder if he'll get a new running mate. He is his own anchor around his own neck, and she adds to the weight of that anchor. So I wonder if they'll do anything. I wonder if they'll get a Buttigieg or something to come and be the running mate or something like that. I don't know. I guess we shall wait and see. All right. That's us for tonight then, guys. Thanks for being with us. Appreciate you giving us your eyes and ears tonight. Remember, if you haven't done so already, head off to Apple Podcasts and subscribe to our audio podcast. But it just means that if you're not with us for a night, and I know you'd never be anywhere else, but if you weren't with us for a night, then the next day it's in your phone, it's there, you can listen to it. If you follow us on Spotify, I mean, for us, it's better to follow us on Apple and rate and review us. But if you follow us on Spotify, you actually get the video content as well. So us and Joe Rogan, we're video content podcasters on Spotify. So if you subscribe to us on Spotify, you'll get the video and audio. If you subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, you get the audio. And if you watch us here, you get all the love. Hey, Chewy, all of it.
It's so much. Like
So much
more than
love.
anyone can handle.
So much love and serenity. All right, team. Wish you all the best. We'll catch you tomorrow night from 9 p.m. for another edition of A Big Hero News. I nearly said Happy Anzac Day. Wish you well on your Anzac Day evening. Would be better. And we'll talk tomorrow night from 9. Hooroo, team.